I've always been the dependable one, the big sister who showed up, cleaned up, and held it all together when no one else would. When our parents fell apart, I stepped in. I packed his school lunches, helped with his college essays, wired him money when he couldn't make rent. I stayed up with him through breakups and breakdowns. He used to say I was the one person who never gave up on him. So imagine my face, just imagine it, when I found out he was getting married. Not from him, no. Not even from a save the date. I saw it on someone's Instagram story, a soft launch of paradise, palm trees, white sand, champagne flutes clinking by the ocean. It was the caption that did it. Can't wait to celebrate love next week. And there he was, smiling next to his fiancée, looking like a GQ ad. At first, I told myself there must have been a mix-up. Maybe the invite got lost. Maybe it was a surprise elopement. But then Aunt Clara called, asking if I'd picked a dress yet. I played dumb. She hesitated, then said, "Oh, I thought you knew." That's when it clicked. I wasn't invited. Not by accident, on purpose. When I finally asked his best friend, just to be sure, he mumbled something about, maybe they thought you wouldn't fit the vibe. Fit the vibe. Like I was an old couch they didn't want ruining the living room aesthetic. My ears were ringing. My heart? Numb. After everything I'd done for him, I didn't fit the vibe? If that's how he sees me. Well, he's about to find out what I really bring to the party. I didn't cry right away. That would have been too easy. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at that photo, him in linen, her in a sundress, the whole scene dripping with curated perfection. My phone buzzed with more posts from people I hadn't heard from in years, all thrilled to be part of the exclusive destination wedding. Not one of them paused to wonder where I was. What hit me hardest wasn't just the betrayal. It was the erasure. I wasn't just left out. I was edited out, like I never mattered, like I was some awkward footnote in his story he'd rather skip. And what killed me? I'd always been proud of him. I bragged about him to coworkers, defended him to family, believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. But clearly, loyalty has an expiration date when your story needs a cleaner aesthetic. Still, I couldn't let myself spiral. I was raised to be strong. Even when everything inside me wanted to break, I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started digging. Flights, hotels, guest lists, the resort hashtag. Every picture felt like salt in a wound, but I took notes. I traced the whole itinerary like I was solving a crime scene. I needed to know who made the list and why I didn't. And there it was, like a slap dressed in sequins. The guest list wasn't about love or connection. It was an image. An influencer's dream of champagne and curated candids. And me? I wasn't aspirational enough, not marketable, too real. That's when I stopped feeling sad, because real is exactly what they're about to get. I kept thinking about the time he broke his collarbone in college. I drove 6 hours in the rain, brought him soup, and slept in a chair by his hospital bed. I remembered how I coached him through his first job interview, even lent him my old blazer. Funny, none of those memories made the guest list. Just polished strangers with spray tans and ring lights. But here's the thing about being overlooked. It wakes something up in you. Something sharp. I looked in the mirror that night and didn't see a woman who got left out. I saw someone who'd been quiet for too long. And if silence was mistaken for weakness, well, that was their mistake. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at that table. I was going to flip it. I didn't know exactly what I was planning yet, but I knew one thing. I was going to that wedding. Not to make a scene, not to scream or cry or get even. No. I was going as the version of myself they chose to ignore. Composed, unbothered, intentional. The one they tried to leave behind while building their perfect story. They wanted a fairy tale. I hope they enjoy the plot twist. Booking that flight felt like lighting a match I'd been holding for years. I didn't even blink. Just opened my browser, searched the dates, and chose the window seat. Non-refundable, of course. I wasn't leaving room for second thoughts. Then came the hotel. Same resort, ocean view. If I was going to show up, I was going to show up right. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. Next came the dress. Not just something pretty. I wanted a statement. Sleek, powerful, unforgettable. I scrolled for hours until I found it. A deep emerald green silk that looked like it could silence a room. I imagined myself in it, standing tall under the island sun, unapologetic. Every choice I made, from the shoes to the earrings, wasn't about fitting in. It was about making sure they'd notice what they tried to erase. I didn't tell a soul, not friends, not family. This wasn't about allies or applause. It was personal, sacred. I needed the silence to steady myself, to feel every step I was taking and own it. Because this wasn't about crashing anything. It was about taking up space. The space I had earned, the space they tried to fill with filters and phoniness. And as I packed my bag, deliberate, focused, calm, I felt something shift. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was awake. I was ready. I was done shrinking to make other people more comfortable. At the airport, I kept my head down, but inside, I was buzzing. This wasn't a vacation. This was a reckoning in a carry-on. As I waited at the gate, sipping a coffee that tasted like adrenaline, I overheard two women gushing about the wedding of the year. One of them scrolled through photos, pointing out who was invited. Influencers, reality show contestants, brand ambassadors with a combined follower count in the millions. My brother had traded in family for feed aesthetics. The more I listened, the clearer it became. I wasn't left out by accident. I was cut, strategically, surgically. He'd built a guest list like a brand campaign, and I didn't match the color palette. No room for messy memories. No space for the sister who knew where the real bones were buried. He wanted a launch party for his new identity. Polished, performative, and painfully shallow. And the bride? Well, from what I could gather, she was the executive producer of this whole fantasy. Every detail had her signature. Tropical minimalism, no kids, no exes, no past. Just a clean, aspirational slate. And I was a glitch in that matrix. A story that didn't match the narrative. I started to wonder what she even knew about him, what parts he edited, what stories he replaced with shinier ones. But that's the beauty of truth. It doesn't vanish just because you pretend it never happened. It waits. Quiet, patient. And when the timing is right, it shines brighter than any filter ever could. The flight was smooth, the kind where the clouds look like something out of a perfume commercial. I stared out the window the whole time, replaying conversations in my head, ones we'd had, and the ones I wished we had. There was a quiet ache in my chest, but it wasn't sadness anymore. It was resolve. You don't stop loving someone overnight, but you can decide how much space they get to occupy in your story. When the plane landed and the warm, sticky air hit my face, I smiled. Not the kind you pose for. The real kind. The kind that comes when you know who you are and you're no longer asking for permission to exist. I walked through the terminal like I belonged there. Because I did. My presence wasn't an intrusion. It was a correction. I didn't have a single plan written down. Just instinct and intention. I knew the wedding was days away, and that gave me time. Time to observe. To feel the edges of the island. To soak in the energy. And maybe to get a little creative. This wasn't about sabotaging anyone. I wasn't there to throw drinks or scream across reception tables. No, I was there to remind them, gracefully, what they'd tried to forget. As I stood at the gate waiting for my luggage, I whispered to myself, barely audible, "Let's ruin a wedding, with grace." The resort was exactly what you'd expect from an overpriced fantasy. White stone walkways, tall palms swaying like they'd been coached, and staff who smiled with the kind of precision that makes you wonder what they really think. I checked in under my real name. No aliases, no drama. I wanted them to know I was here. I wanted the whispers to start naturally, like heat rising off the pavement. The room was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows, ocean view, crisp linens that smelled like citrus and bleach. I unpacked slowly, deliberately hanging that green dress by the window so the light would catch the silk. Then I poured myself a glass of the welcome champagne and stepped out onto the balcony. I snapped a photo. Just my hand, the glass, and that ridiculous turquoise sea in the background. No caption, just a location tag. By sunset, the ripple had begun. I saw it in glances at the pool. People scrolling through their phones, pausing, then looking up. Recognition blooming in fragments. A bridesmaid I half remembered from college walked by me twice, faking casual. I said nothing, just smiled once, barely, and let her feel the weight of not knowing how to ask why I was there. I wasn't angry anymore. That would have been too easy. No, what I felt was something cooler, sharper. Like slipping on a pair of heels you know will make them uncomfortable. Not because you're trying to hurt anyone, but because they never expected you to look that damn good walking in. The next morning, I made a quiet appearance at breakfast. Hair down, sunglasses on, linen dress that whispered, effortless. I took a table near the edge of the terrace, where I could feel the breeze and watch the guests file in. Their voices got hushed when they saw me. No one approached, but they watched. I stirred my coffee slowly, like I didn't notice a thing. But I noticed everything. By noon, my brother found me. Alone. No entourage, no cameras, just him, in designer shorts and that tight little smile he gets when he's trying to control the narrative. "Sarah?" he said, like he wasn't sure it was really me. I looked up and said, "Oh, hey, I figured the invite got lost in the mail." He blinked, caught off guard by the casual tone. That's the thing about Grace. It confuses people who expect chaos. He pulled me aside into the garden walkway behind the spa and started talking fast. Damage control. Said it was a mix-up, they meant to send one. It wasn't personal. I let him sweat through it, hands in his pockets, eyes darting. And when he finally stopped talking, I tilted my head and said, "You really think I flew all this way over a postage error?" That's when the cracks started to show. He asked me not to make a thing of it. That's when I knew he was scared, not of me exactly, but of the version of me who wasn't afraid to show up, the version of me he couldn't control. The rest of the day, I played it smooth, poolside with a book I never opened. A casual chat with the concierge. Laughter, just loud enough to carry, over a cocktail at the bar. I was seen, not dramatic, not loud, just present, and people noticed. A woman from the bride's side struck up a conversation about my earrings. 10 minutes later, we were talking like old friends. Turns out, she was the bride's soon-to-be mother-in-law, and she adored me. That night, I mingled just enough to be talked about. I complimented outfits, listened intently, asked questions no one else was asking. I wasn't performing. I was reminding them that authenticity still held value, even in a room built for illusion. The bride kept her distance. My brother avoided eye contact. But the rest? They were drawn in, curious, hungry for something real. Before I went back to my room, I slipped something into the wedding planner's hands. A USB drive, simple and elegant, in a velvet pouch. "Would you mind playing this during the reception slideshow?" I asked, sweet as syrup. She smiled, nodded, tucked it into her clipboard. No questions asked. That's the thing about confidence. It creates its own gravity. Back in my suite, I stood at the window, watching the moonlight shimmer across the water. I had done nothing loud, nothing cruel, but I'd already shifted the atmosphere. They invited the image they wanted. But now, the truth had checked in, and it had excellent taste. The reception was breathtaking. Fairy lights strung like stars, tables dressed in white linen and gold accents, violins playing something delicate as the guests took their seats. Everything was manicured, immaculate, performative. I watched it all unfold from my place near the back, not hidden, just strategically placed, present enough to be undeniable, distant enough to stay dangerous. I wasn't nervous, not even a little. My dress shimmered under the lights, the color rich and striking against the sea of neutrals. I sipped my wine slowly, made polite conversation with the woman seated beside me, a publisher from New York who thought I was refreshingly grounded. That made me laugh. Grounded. What a lovely way to say unbought. When it came time for the slideshow, the lights dimmed and forks clinked against dessert plates. The planner wheeled out the screen and projector with the kind of ceremony that promised curated perfection. And for the first 10 seconds, that's exactly what it was. Soft focus beach shots, couple selfies, faux candid moments in golden hour lighting. Then, it shifted. The next photo was of my brother, younger, frailer, sitting on the edge of a twin bed in a dorm room, me beside him, holding a pizza box and trying to make him smile. The one after that, him in a cap and gown, and me in the background, holding his jacket. Then the hospital room. Then the birthday when no one else showed up. The silence in the room changed, like a thread had been pulled from the seams of a very expensive dress. At first there was just confusion. Polite smiles frozen mid-bite, eyebrows raised, guests glancing at each other like maybe the slideshow had taken a wrong turn. But then the photos kept coming. My voice, shaky but loving, narrating over a video of me teaching him how to drive. His voice, years younger, calling me his hero in a birthday card. It wasn't vengeful. It was honest. Raw. Undeniable. No one moved, not even the waitstaff. The bride's mother pressed a napkin to her mouth. The best man sat rigid, fork halfway to his lips. And my brother? He looked like someone had kicked the air out of him. Mouth slightly open, jaw tense, face pale under the soft candlelight. The curated illusion he built was unraveling, one memory at a time. Then came the final slide. White text on a black screen. Simple, quiet, devastating. To the sister who gave everything and wasn't invited. The screen went dark. Silence. Real, heavy silence. The kind you can feel on your skin. No applause. No laughter. Just the sound of forks being set down, breaths being held, the undeniable truth settling like dust on fine china. I stood, adjusted my dress, and picked up my glass. And with a calm so smooth it cut, I raised it in a gentle toast. "Enjoy your new life," I said. "You erased your past, but I made sure no one forgets it." I walked out before anyone could speak, not in a rush, not storming, just done. My heels clicked against the stone path like punctuation marks on a story I'd finished telling. Behind me, I heard nothing. No footsteps, no calls of my name. Just the weight of a room realizing they'd applauded a fairy tale built on the back of someone else's silence. Out in the night air, I felt light. The kind of light that only comes after years of carrying too much. I didn't need to see his face again. I didn't need closure. That moment, that shift in the room when truth replaced the performance, was enough. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one giving. I was the one choosing. Back in my room, I kicked off my heels, poured a second glass of champagne, and watched the reflection of the moon on the water. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whether there would be backlash, apologies, more silence. But I knew this. I had stopped begging to be seen. I had shown up, spoken up, and walked away with my dignity intact. And somehow in the stillness of that island night, I knew something had shifted far beyond that wedding. A reckoning had arrived, not just for my brother, but for me. I had stopped being a footnote, I had become the headline. Word traveled fast. By the time I landed back home, my inbox was overflowing. Texts from cousins I hadn't heard from in years, emails from friends who'd seen the video someone posted, DMs from strangers saying, "You did what we all dream of doing." I hadn't posted anything. I didn't have to. Truth has a way of broadcasting itself when it finally gets a microphone. The wedding, I heard, didn't recover. The reception limped along in awkward silence, the couple leaving early. No one danced. The bride's family was furious, not at me, but at the man she'd married. They'd seen a story, packaged and shiny, then watched it fall apart like a house built on sand. And now, that sand was shifting beneath every relationship he'd tried to curate. I didn't revel in it. Not exactly. I didn't want destruction. I wanted recognition. And more than that, I wanted peace. The kind you earn after finally setting a boundary no one thought you were brave enough to draw. And as the days passed, something surprising happened. People reached out to tell me their own stories, of exclusion, of being silenced, of showing up anyway. That's when I realized what I'd done wasn't petty. It wasn't dramatic. It was necessary. It cracked something open, not just in that glittery little bubble, but in the hearts of people who'd spent their lives being told to shrink, to be quiet, to not ruin the vibe. The calls from my brother came next. Missed, ignored, deleted. There was nothing left to say, not because I hated him, but because I finally understood that love without respect isn't love at all. His voicemails started out defensive, then softened into guilt, then desperation. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, but because I was busy rebuilding something he never thought I'd have the courage to build. Myself. I started pouring my energy into something new, something mine. I'd always loved flowers, the way they speak in color and scent, how they can say, "I'm sorry," or "I see you," without a single word. So I took a leap and opened my own event studio. Not to compete with anyone, not to prove a point, just to create spaces that felt honest, celebrations that meant something, moments that weren't filtered through someone else's expectations. People came, friends, referrals, even strangers who followed my story. They didn't want perfection anymore. They wanted heart. I gave them centerpieces that whispered memories, arches that held vows like soft secrets, tables that welcomed everyone, not just the photogenic few. It wasn't a business. It was a reclamation of meaning. A way to say, real still matters. And slowly, beautifully, the narrative shifted. I was no longer the sister who crashed the wedding. I became the woman who reminded people what celebration is actually for. Months passed. The wedding photos stopped showing up online. Their captions grew stiff, the smiles tighter. Then came the whispers, rumors of tension, of therapy, of a honeymoon that never really ended. And eventually, someone sent me the link to the announcement, a joint statement, amicable, vague. Irreconcilable differences. Translation: the illusion couldn't hold under the weight of reality. I didn't gloat. That wasn't the point. But I did feel something settle. A quiet affirmation that when you choose truth over image, the right people find you, and the wrong ones lose their grip. My circle became smaller, stronger, filled with laughter that didn't feel rehearsed. My business thrived. Clients hugged me after meetings. Brides cried during walkthroughs. People told me they felt seen. That was everything. One evening, I hosted my own event, a soft launch for the studio. Intimate, candlelit, filled with flowers and warmth. Near the end, a woman came up to me, misty-eyed, and said, "You gave me hope I didn't know I needed." That stayed with me. Because maybe this story was never just about betrayal. Maybe it was about becoming. So I raised my glass, no cameras, no spotlight, no stage, and toasted to the life I'd built. Not flawless, but full, real, loved. Some people spend their lives chasing a perfect image. I'd rather live a beautiful truth.